right.
Here we go.
And we're off.
And
Gaithan.
The race is on. Gaithan, one of the first ones in, my man. Welcome. Good to see you. Glad to have you here.
Where's the theme music, Josh? I thought there was.
I know. Andrew, there you go. I should like do a little song and dance, right, Dana? I mean, so good to see so many of you joining in. This is the last of our series, Will. I mean, this is the last one. We're hitting the finish line a little bit here.
You know, it's kind of crazy. We started these at the last week of March, and I just checked this morning, 2,400 different people have participated, either in this webinar series or the ones on Thursdays focused on travel trade. So it's been a really cool run. And Josh, I can't thank you enough for being such a capable moderator and host and getting all the, getting this great thinking. It's just so many incredible people that have participated on panels and in questions and really pushing the dialogue forward. So it's been a crazy 5 months, but, and a lot has changed, but it's been a great resource to keep everybody connected.
Yeah, no, it totally has. And I'm glad you said capable. I thought for sure you're going to use another C word. So no, but that's, you honor me, man. I appreciate it. This has been a joy. You know, obviously it is, we love this industry. This is beloved, you know, this is a beloved space, you know, working with people, for people, with purpose, on purpose. It really is, you know, all of our small towns, main streets, you know, it is such life-giving work. And so to be able to do this and in a new medium, you know, in the midst of crazy pandemic, everything shifting, moving around, all the unknown, it really has been a gift, and has provided a little bit of sanity, honestly, you know, I think in the midst of the insanity that we've been going through. So really thankful for everybody tuning in already. And you know, so many of you have become familiar names, and many of you I know. It has been good to connect. Ed, glad to see you again tuning in, and Debbie, so many of you tuning in every week. So it's been good. This week is going to be no different. I'm sure you may, even those of you tuning in, you may see faces you recognize. You may know David, you may know Alisa. If not, you're going to get a chance to get to know them and hear from them a little bit more, which is a gift. Thank you both, for the two of you, for tuning in and giving up your time to be with us this week.
I appreciate the invite. Thanks, Will.
It's been, it's going to be good. And, you know, obviously talking about, you know, continuing, how do we evolve? How, you know, is this the capstone? We're about to move into, you know, the next month, September. And then of course, October, we've got ETS to look forward to. And that has been a wonderful event over the years. And we know, this year, you know, although be slightly different, we're all looking forward to, you know, to those of us who can be in person again.
Yeah, so it's going to be exciting. We're going to focus on 21 days focused on 2021 and putting 2020 in the rearview mirror. So it's celebrating our 21st anniversary of eTourism Summit with the same great content. Just it will be hybrid. So we'll have 20 days of virtual, and then we'll have 2 days live and in person. And actually, we've moved those 2 days, so that's going to be November 8 through 10 in Universal Orlando Resort. So that'll be fun. We're really looking forward to eTourism Summit, providing our industry with again some more thought-provoking plans to help ideas and conversations to move the industry forward in 2021. And I think, Josh, as we were talking just yesterday, it's fascinating just how far our industry has moved since March. And one of the funniest conversations when we could kind of talk about the lexicon of of travel industry over the course of, you know, 4 or 5 months of this, from pause to pivot, you know, and all the conversations. It's been really fascinating. And I have no doubt that the industry is going to continue to evolve and come out of this in stronger, more connected ways than probably ever have before.
Yeah, it is. Somebody out there, right? We need a really creative graphic designer out there to do a travel industry meme for us, and it's the lexicon, the pandemic lexicon. You know what I mean? New normal. We were joking around with the P words, right? It's just trying to come up with those, but there really is so many. Next normal, new normal, unprecedented. I mean, on and on and on. There's so many of these that have, probably at least a little bit. I'm smiling, not out of lack of sensitivity and empathy for sure, but because we've been through a lot. We really have. We've been through a lot. And today, we want to continue the conversation. We thought, while we have noticed a lot of changes. Certainly we've heard stories, people have been reaching out to you, Will, and myself, and we've heard a lot of stories of change and different things that different people are going through. But there still does seem to be a fair amount of paralysis that we see, right? And I think that's part of what the topic we want to talk about is how do we move post-paralysis? How do we get beyond that? How do we, in fact, truly become smarter, faster, quicker DMOs, both in kind of operational models, certainly operational capacity, administrative capacity, but in our marketing and everything else. Just how do we shift and actualize on the P word pivot that we've heard so much about, you know what I mean? So couldn't think of any, couple better guests to have than David and Alisa. So welcome. David, for those that don't know you, introduce yourself a little bit here.
I am David Downing. I'm with Visit St. Pete Clearwater for many years, became CEO and president. I'm now president of brand at United Landmark Associates. We do development, we do hospitality, lots of different things. Also some smaller boutique type stuff. But you and I were joking yesterday, Josh, when we were prepping for this. It was if I'm showed one more time how long 6 feet is, I'm going to get one.
That's right. That's right.
I'm 6 feet tall. I've fallen over on my face before. That's exactly 6 feet forward. So I get it. And I know we had to find these new messages. You talk about paralysis. And in the animal kingdom, you think when you are threatened, you have 3 options. You have fight, flight, or freeze. And I think a lot of us have chosen freeze because we don't know how to fight. We really can't go anywhere. So we are in this stasis, we're in this paralysis. And you can see it from the local DMO level all the way to the state and national boards as well. So it's not like no one's in it by themselves, everyone's in it together and everyone's taking very timid steps forward.
That's right. No, it's really good. Alisa, I love this view that you got too. I love that picture behind you too, but welcome. I'm so glad you're here. You bring a smile to my face. You absolutely, so this is fun. Those that don't know you, introduce yourself.
I'm not 6 feet tall. I'm 5'2", and so I can really relate, David, to what you were saying. I'm a former tourism commissioner and bureau chief of commerce in West Virginia, and then I went over to the dark side and I was president of Virginia Tourism Corporation for 9 years. And came home to my hometown of Charleston, West Virginia as the president of the CVB here and just recently retired. And a really opportune time to start a small consulting business for DMOs. And I'm happy to report to all of you that I've made $300 this year. If Felicia Elliott from Fairmont's on the call, thank you. And it's a really interesting time. What I think when we're talking about P words, it's not exactly a P word, but it is unprecedented. And to me, it offers some really great opportunities to get out of this paralysis and to really look at our infrastructure, whether it's human resources, our funding mechanisms, our partnerships with fellow, not only DMOs, but also our partners in economic development. So I think this will be a lively conversation today, and I'm pleased and honored actually that you asked me. Thank you so much.
No, you honor us, seriously. And Will, we've got a couple surprises even possibly, right? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. We might have a couple show up here that's, this maybe spice up the conversation a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think, Josh, one thing about this group that we've got together, and I think the opportunity to offer some insight from, 4 people that are, built our livelihoods in DMOs that are now on the outside and can kind of maybe talk a little bit freer now than would otherwise in the, being bound by the politics and the issues of being a DMO. So maybe the opportunity to address some of the kind of the elephants in the room that are out there with DMOs and kind of the age of COVID and beyond.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the other things that was very, very obvious to those watching the industry inside and out, and I agree, Will, it's different to look from the industry outside in. You can see things a little differently. You can talk a little more freely, but I think the best description I've heard about the pandemic is that it's kind of a wormhole. You know, it's just compressing time. It is accelerating all of the problems and opportunities that existed before and cutting right to the quick. It's the Cliff's Notes, right? So we're getting quickly to the end. And I think this discussion, and Will, going back to Visit Florida days and even before that, we've had these discussions for years about the relevance of a DMO, the R word. You know, how do we maintain our relevance moving forward? And I think nothing has sped that conversation up like the last 5 months. You know, and it's not even relevance in how do we move forward and what do we do with our resource. I think it comes to the existential level of what is the relevance of what we're doing when our playing field and our playmates and our playthings have all changed. There was some discussion on that. You know, we're talking about right-sizing DMOs. I've talked with a lot of DMO leaders in the last several months, and they all right-sizing their own staffs. I think the larger question is, does the industry need to be right-sized? And I know Alisa had some thoughts on this when we were talking yesterday about, you know, the volume of CVBs just where she lives.
Absolutely.
I mean, the proliferation of the CVB world, and a lot of it is driven by local governments wanting to maintain control over lodging tax. Also on the state level, I think it's interesting. We were talking yesterday, David, about, you know, when you have to go back to the lawmakers every year, you have this need to spend all that money, because if you don't spend it, they think you don't need it. And so, you know, you're doing this balancing act of that. But in my little county of West Virginia, there's only like 200,000 people in the county. We have 4 or 5 CVBs. And I just think, you know, you think you don't want to get into those murky waters. However, I do think this is the appropriate time to look at that, to look at, do we need all of these different DMOs? Is there a way that we can share financial and human resources and be able to expand and work more closely with the state, commingling those resources? And I don't want to downplay the human resource side of this. You know, I think it's always in the minds of business people, well, technology can take over, when it's really sometimes the human resources, the boots on the ground, that really make our destination and the experience of our destination relevant, to your point.
It's interesting because even in the midst of, you know, we look back historically, we see, and we've talked about over the course of the summer that this has been, you know, we're using another buzzword, this has been an unprecedented type of, you know, thing that our industry is going through, and yet we have been experiencing the longest track record of success, which, as we all know, if we're really being gut level honest with each other, nothing lulls us into mediocrity better than success, right? We are humans, creatures of habits. We develop these unconscious rhythms of habit. You know, we develop these things which we just, you know, literally on a brain chemistry level, you see these are grooves. These are how grooves get created. You know, pathways, neural pathways, and so that happens, and we see it in our marketing, we see it in our communication strategies, we see it in how we do strategic plans, and on and on and on. And so in a way, you know, this pandemic has really given us a gift, if we're willing to be so bold to call it that, and realize that it is a tremendous opportunity to ask the hard questions, to look in the mirror and be really gut level honest about, okay, what do we need to do? And maybe the things that we need to do, they might be short-term painful, but they're the best things for our destinations as a whole.
Right. And, you know, the idea of paralysis, and we all talk about, you know, going back to normal and what that means. And it's popping up in so many different ways. I mean, you know, we want to bring our staffs back as fast as we can and come off, you know, bring them off of furloughs and hire our teams back. But the question is, is that the same job descriptions necessary? I mean, are we doing the same things that we were doing before, or do we have to retrain and reprogram and relook at what those jobs look like? And I also thought, just the overarching why. And there was a great article, Josh. Funny, Josh texted me right before this, said, have you seen what this article Bill Geist just put out? And it really talks about the why, and why are we doing this, and what other organizations within our communities are doing, have the same why, and how can you have better cooperation and participation between chambers of commerce, economic development commissions, downtown improvement districts, where everybody is off kind of in their own directions now. This is, again, a gift of an opportunity to think different and really look at the why we're doing what we're doing and how we can do it better.
Well, I'll double down on that there. I see names on the attendees here, some friends from across the state of Florida and across the industry from DMOs. I see Patrick from Visit Tampa Bay, Tam from Lee County. And these are conversations been happening in the industry far before COVID. Right? It wasn't, like I said, I believe COVID just accelerated everything into we're having this big conversation now because we finally have to. It's not optional. It's mandatory to have this conversation now. And I think on top of that, when you have the ever-changing landscape of what's going on, Josh, you mentioned about maybe commingling or the idea of working with our economic development or chambers, and all those worlds were so siloed for reasons. Political, real, optical, fake, boundaries that existed that I think, moving forward, if there ever were an opportunity to address those boundaries or explore them or maybe knock some of them down, this would be it.
No, absolutely. I mean, go ahead, Alisa.
But and this is the opportunity, because the people that we need to talk to, I think about, what Roger always quotes Roger Dow always quotes about, we're no longer the cheerleaders, we're the football team. We've worked really hard to gain respect as an industry, but yet we just haven't been able to mesh that with our brethren in the economic development world. We have more respect, but do we have this total effort to make our destination rich in other ways than tourism, but the tourism is a part of that. So I think now's the best time to talk to those decision makers, because this didn't just affect our industry. Obviously, it's affected the whole world economy. So now is the time. And I think that this paralysis, we've got to break through that and look deep within that, and not just think, well, we're just going to start marketing again and opening up. Those are important things, but it's not, that hasn't really happened to a great degree for most of the country, and for most of the small CVBs, I'll speak for them. That hasn't happened for us.
No, that's right. And I'll just steal this from you, David, because this was great, but there's been no incentivization, right? There's to do anything different, to change. And so that's the other piece that we're kind of stepping into now that can, maybe that becomes the gateway. Maybe that becomes the political cover, if you will, locally, to just acknowledge, say, hey guys, let's all step back for a second. Things have been really good for the last decade or so. So we've not necessarily been incentivized to do anything different. Now we are, right? And then all of a sudden you can position a coalition around looking at our success and celebrating that, instead of maybe the perception of, well, I'm gonna cast blame and we should do this and I need to own it. Ego gets in the way so quickly here in these spaces.
And Josh, one other thing that gets in the way, and I'll drill down on this just for a minute, because I think most people, again, I'm scrolling through who's on this, and I think they get it, is funding and funding mechanisms for what we do, either collectively or individually. From a DMO perspective, if you're in a state where that those funds have very, very strict, tight strictures on how they can be used and where. Same for the space of, let's say, economic development. Same thing. They have to be for seed money for growth. Let's go on to the chambers. Well, you remember, you're not a chamber, you dues paying member, all these other things. So until that, and that is always where despite the best intentions, and even if we can smooth over some political waters, the underpinnings of where the funding comes from and the strictures, again, that you can use or can't use these monies for, has always been one of the greatest challenges of trying to do something like that.
I think and again, just got a great question here. I want to remind all of you that are tuning in, feel free to use the chat window, use the Q&A. We'll do our best to get to any kind of questions that you've got along the way. But, when as we were prepping for this and even thinking about it, there's been all kinds of great metaphors that we've talked about, all kinds of great stories along this summer and that we've heard. But the idea of even asking ourselves, and we're, ETS is all planned about this 2021, and thinking ahead. I remember Ali from Seattle talking about, this was a month ago at least. She was like, oh, no, this year, we're already done thinking this year. Our heads really are strategically thinking already about 21, right? We've heard from others, on calls. I'm going back to Prince William County and going, you know what? They're asking themselves, who are we? Why do we exist, right? What's our purpose? They're asking these existential type questions because they know their consumers are. Travelers are doing the same thing, right? More than ever, consumers are activated around aligning on purpose. So as an organization or a brand, if you're not, actively telling, this is why safety messaging is so key, right? If you're not advocating for these things, you really miss the opportunity to connect with the consumer. And when we think about it from a macro point, and then you go a little bit, you drill into the destination side, you go, this is a great time for all of us to rally around understanding our ideal consumer, knowing, and this is, Bill talks about this in the article too, but it really does start with a visit, right? And those that can issue that visit should be leading this initiative more so than ever, which is the DMO, clearly.
Well, and the DMOs I think have really stepped up around the country over the course of this crisis, focusing on a market that hasn't necessarily been a key message, and that's the local audience. What does the community need? What does the community want? And really helping the small businesses. When you kind of look and see, at all the case studies that we've heard over the course of the last few months, I think that in the focus on the supporting the locals and supporting the community, small businesses, and all of that, which really wasn't in the wheelhouse at DMOs, pre-COVID, but really became kind of the organization that was connecting the community through COVID, which has been, I think, again, a huge evolution in the role of DMOs. And I think as that kind of mindset moves forward, you kind of look at the incredible opportunities that DMOs have to be the number one kind of connector of a community for the good of the community. And then again, to Bill's article, it's just, it all is about marketing, right? I mean, DMOs are the marketing experts, and we're starting to see, taking those marketing chops and applying it across things that otherwise wouldn't have, that a chamber or an economic development group doesn't necessarily have.
Will, I couldn't agree
No,
with you more.
sorry.
Go ahead, Alisa.
But at no other time have we had the opportunity to drive home the needs of our frontline employees. I mean, I was talking to my neighbors the other day. We don't have any fairs and festivals to go to. There's no music venues to go to. There's no sporting activities we can go to. You know what our entertainment is now? Distancing at restaurants. And finally, people are really understanding the story of our frontline employees. They are understanding for the first time. We've been talking about it, but we haven't been getting through to the populace. And this is one of these things that leadership at the national level, we need to capitalize upon this time to say, what's that model like? And what is our community doing to support these people who create our experience that we don't own?
Couldn't agree more. And again, I would point again backwards to a lot of DMOs, because of how they're funded statutorily. They can't spend money preaching the value of what they do to their constituents. So it's a little bit of you're a little bit of a game that there's no winning. The point I was going to make earlier was, how it accelerated some things, but it obliterated other things. Before all of this, you remember #overtourism? And that is probably a hashtag or a concept that likely won't be trending anytime soon. But it was a very serious concern in some of the key places in the world for tourism, and there was no real good answer to it. That there was a lot of seemingly crappy choices. This, the pandemic has been a Zamboni in sorts of that. The whole going back to pre-pandemic, the hotels and Airbnb were butting heads. Hotels are claiming Airbnb have a natural advantage. They don't have to follow any of the fire codes or the insurance and all this other stuff. Flip side, we're in a pandemic. A lot of people feel more comfortable in an Airbnb than a hotel because it's a one-off. It could be a whole house by themselves. It could interact with other people. Look at Uber. Uber was getting the upper hand now versus rental cars. Now people want to get in their own car and drive to that place. I mean, there's really no consistent pattern across the board as to how it's affected each of those. But man, is it interesting to compare them 5 months ago to today.
That the question about over-tourism, which I think is really interesting, because it's true that we're not worried about over-tourism right now. But I think a lot of the questions that applied that really needed to be asked about over-tourism are the same questions that need to be asked as we come out of COVID, right? So it's like, who are the right visitors that we want in our community? How do we identify them and target them and recruit them? Because it's not just volume for volume's sake anymore, and that's the old the old normal when we were all growing fast and it didn't matter if what you did, we were all showing record numbers. But now we have to really focus and identify in on the right visitors for our community and when we want them here, and when we how we want to, is it volume, or is it consistency of visitors? Is it high spend visitors? Is it international visitors? Is it local regional visitors? My biggest concern is, I think I don't want to see, which we've all done in the past, is have everybody in the country, when we start opening up in 21, just focus on regional drive visitors. I think there's an opportunity to really think through and say, I'm going to focus my energies on Amex Platinum card holders that traveled before, and they're going to be the ones that come back and support our small restaurants and our boutiques and things like that, not just go regional.
And Will, there are those major areas that for Hawaii, regional drive business is an option.
Right.
Vegas doesn't have a huge regional drive business either. Miami doesn't have a huge regional drive business. So there are opportunities for others, but there's others who just have to really reconsider what the draw is and how they're going to go about doing that.
Let me jump in here. Go ahead, Alisa.
Go ahead. Real quick, there's these destinations that are doing really well, but their brand is getting affected because people are going to places where there's lots of folks, let's say Myrtle Beach, for our example here in West Virginia, that are bringing back COVID, and then how is that going to impact in the long term a destination like Myrtle Beach, which is a beautiful destination, and it's a different kind of over-tourism I would represent.
No, this is such a valued conversation. I do want to bring up, Nandy, you've posted something in the chat and the Q&A. So, part of my hope for the series all along has been that we have just really good, honest conversations. And I think you bring up something that's really important. She said, I'm kind of surprised with this line of conversation. Yes, the points discussed are true and needed. However, looking at the panel of all marketing management consultants who are past DMO CVB CEOs making the most of the crisis, and I'm sure going to charge a lot of money to help the very same organizations that you would like downsized to get funding or existing, is hypocritical. Why do you all, when you were CEOs of Virginia, Florida, or St. Pete, try downsizing or being efficient? We have too many consultants in travel tourism taking advantage of tourism progress and travel community ignorance. That needs to stop too. So first of all, thank you for saying that. And thank you for being brave enough to say and ask the questions, because it's really, really good. I mean, it is really good. I know that I too have felt similarly. So the last thing I think, and I won't speak for David or Alisa, but the last thing I think, the energy of the tone or anything of what we would say would be that this is how we necessarily want to operate or think about ourselves or would project ourselves into the space. But I would say, this moment in time has certainly really pressed the button, like we've said, on things that, to be honest with you, we were not incentivized to think about before, nor were we even invited to really kind of think about them. David, go ahead.
Hey man, I couldn't agree more with the first part. But the second part of it, I think Alisa handled it. That she's made a whopping $300 on consulting since this began. That's not there right. Um, but the point being, you know, I think all of this goes into the same argument. You know, a lot of these structures that are in place, and Alisa said it best. You know, unless you spend your entire budget, the powers that be are going to put you down for it and say, well, clearly you don't know how to budget, or you don't need all that money, right? So there's a structure in place that automatically negates efficiencies on that level. That's something we work very hard at Visit St. Pete Clearwater year over year. Doing just because we can do something, does it mean we should do something? The answer was no. By the time I left there, we had squirreled away almost 38% in reserves just because of that very thing. So she brings up a very good point about but it begs your point earlier. You know, how do we retool? How can we bring that expertise in-house that we really need to have in-house on the DMO level? Are there too many vendors in this space? I think that's a question definitely worth looking at.
Absolutely, completely agree.
I think the people around this panel don't have this ulterior motive that you suggest. I know I don't. You know, when I decided to semi-retire, I still felt like my love for tourism. I know you know people who have left the industry and they have to come back because we love tourism. And we feel like we have something to add to this space. So, you know, I would just represent to you that the motive here is to maybe take some of the expertise that, and present company excluded, but David and Will and Josh have been through to, we believe, give us an opportunity, a platform for us to have these discussions. And this is really not to tell you what to do or to hire us, but what it is about, I believe, is let's talk as an industry, because we can't be together at ESTO, we can't be together at these conferences like we used to. What are we doing at this unprecedented time to share knowledge and to share our expertise? And frankly, to share our mistakes. You know, there's lots of mistakes, and it would take too long for me to tell you all of mine. So, but I'm just saying, I do believe that's what these podcasts were about.
No, absolutely. Will, I want to let you jump in there too, but I think that's key, right? If we can see anything, if we can really be honest and see anything about right now, admitting mistakes, we've toyed around with this with ETS in the past, but being able to admit mistakes, like, can we demystify that for a second? There's not a single one of us on this call or a single attendee that hasn't failed. And if you think you haven't, go talk to your spouse or best friend and they'll tell you otherwise. I'm just telling you, you know what I mean? So like, let's demystify that and go, we all make mistakes. We've all made a lot of them. We've all been ignorant. We've all loved our ego enough to where when things are good, we keep going in that direction. We don't necessarily challenge the status quo. Like everybody, like that's human nature. So no shame necessarily to be had around that. But instead, now looking forward, you know, and certainly, you know, a little bit of a rear view, we can go, gosh, we did miss this before. Like we really did. We probably have been missing this for a long time, actually, in fact. So to Leslie's point, even here, I love this going, you know, instead of maybe EVs and everything else, but what about attractions? I go, yes, all of it. I can't tell you how many calls with small towns I've been on over this pandemic period where like they've been struggling to even have lines of communication with different stakeholders, whether it's attractions, restaurants, or small businesses. And I go, that, if anything, that's got to change. That's one thing that has got to change there. Will, go ahead. I know you were about to jump in there. I didn't mean to cut you off earlier.
Oh no, I'm all in on all of your lines of thinking. I think the one thing is to the comfort level of destination marketing period. You know, if we just have to acknowledge that when everybody was having record years year over year, you know, half the destinations were actually losing market share, right? I mean, just by virtue of it, but we had record years, so really not incentivized to look at change. And if this has done anything, it's really re-leveled the playing field for every destination, all attractions, all businesses that are focused on tourism. And as we know, I mean, this is our industry's been hit hardest. So we're going to have to rethink and really reinvent ourselves to move forward. And again, I don't think that on the bright side, there's not any other organization that knows how to do it better from a marketing perspective, from a community kind of connection perspective. That's what we do. It's been interesting on our Thursday webinars, which will continue, focusing on travel trade, but there's a desperate need for that collective knowledge of what's happening within communities, not only on connecting, tour operators with businesses and the suppliers that are in the communities, but now it's basic knowledge of what's happening, what the rules are, what are the, because it's not the same from one destination to the next. So there is a real role to, I think, make for DMOs to come out of this stronger than ever. But I do think that there's going to be different job descriptions, different, roles and responsibilities that we're not going to necessarily just do what we did when we were before, in 2019.
And I think sadly we've heard enough that there's still some of that thinking, right? I mean, I think we've heard there is enough of that thinking, which I think is probably maybe why you're perceiving the activation that you are through our energy. It's because we're just going, oh, please no, please no. Please don't think that you're going to be able to come out on the other side of this and just go back to some previous state, right? We are headed toward a future state. No one has the gift of prophecy here to tell you exactly what that future state's going to be like. But we are indeed headed to a future state. That is for sure.
Yeah.
I think we might have a guest coming up in a few minutes. So before that, though, I want to make sure we get to Andrew's comment here, and because Andrew is certainly one of the smartest out of all of us, and I just love it. Talking about the elephant in the room, too many CVBs. We've talked about that. This kind of stuff. But what do you guys think about? Should there be some kind of mandatory minimum or some kind of minimum level of hotel tax collections, really before we amass even the need for some kind of organizational entity to do anything to steward those tax collections? What would you guys say to that?
It's an interesting question. And again, I think the downside of politics in destination marketing is that it discourages kind of innovation and partnerships. I mean, how many times do you have, one region how many regions of the country, and I'm sure everybody on the call can identify with, the partners that they wish they could partner with more frequently. And I remember, some extraordinary examples in Southwest Florida, when partnering, in conjunction with an airline, and you're like, God, I just want to celebrate that because it's destiny, working together for the common good. Northwest Florida has done a few really good examples around golf and expanding some of that into international. But, again, maybe it's not formal, but we can't be promoting geographic boundaries that the consumers don't know. I mean, the more cooperation and partnership that we can instill come out of this, the best. And I think in every crisis that I've dealt with, I think the goal has always got to be, how do you create a partnership that's going to be strong enough to survive the good times and make that win-win partnership? So I don't know what the political issue is around multiple DMOs in areas, but I certainly hope that recognizing that nobody's gonna have as much money as they used to have. There's gonna be more noise in the marketplace than there's ever been before, and the best opportunity to leverage existing funding in a destination that is, the same across county lines. The more partnership, the better coming out of this.
I think critical to not only just combining resources, financial and human resources, for the betterment of the entire state, region, the country for that matter, is that we struggled. This is an opportunity, and I know that my former office of the Charleston CVB is looking at this, but we always budgeted in the year projecting out what the bed tax was going to be. And this always created a lot of angst because of the upfront costs of marketing and were you going to be able to make budget? And what if something happens, like a water crisis happened in Charleston, and then your budget goes down? Is this not an opportunity to work with your funding mechanism to, be really lean and mean for the next few years, and then have money in reserve that's not projected out, which is a totally different model than most states. But for small DMOs, this thing has been devastating. I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of my colleagues that are just not going to be in business anymore.
You know what? I'll jump on that. Listen, it's for large DMOs. It's been devastating too. The devastation is just on a different scale. And to answer your question, Josh, and it's a great question. It's about partnerships. I know we had a partnership with Airbnb years ago. For content on our website. Tell me that didn't raise hairs among the hoteliers.
Right.
It did, but the quote that I like is, "Don't wait until you need friends to make them." Start reaching out now. We should have been doing this all along as good, DMO leaders, or as good business people, as good people who are in business. But I would just keep it there. I hate the phrase outside the box, but think of organizations, meet with people you think in a million years you wouldn't have a reason to work with. A lunch or a cup of coffee is always a great investment for something like that.
So I love it, because that's a perfect segue into Patrick's question that he asks, right? I mean, we certainly have been talking for a long time of right sizing. Maybe there's new roles. Maybe we're going to be shifting and requiring new skills. I would say yes to that. That needs to be an obvious. But why don't we just go around and say, David, Will, and Lisa, what is one role maybe you think is a new role? And as you see it today, again, nobody's going to hold you to this right here, but as you see it today, what do you think this new role is? What do you think, from what you've seen, is missing? Might fill a piece of that? Like, how would you describe it? What would let's just throw a title out and say, if we're being creative, let's just imagine what that title would be.
Community engagement officer. Maybe we're focused on membership development and recruiting members and, providing some member value, but maybe expanding beyond that, providing resources to everybody in the community, not necessarily.
That's great. Yeah.
That might be one. Zoom production.
This internal look at your community and this opportunity, this has been a trend that we've looked at, the whole industry's been looking at. Talk to your community. And I do understand, David, that there are some encumbrances, which is really one of the things you need to address. But as you all know, even from the marketing standpoint, engaging your community now is more important than ever. And so that notion of only market out of market is really gone away. And so we've become these managers of the social media platforms, and to do that effectively, we need all the community leaders. So I would just say one word: leadership. And don't sit on your hands. Get out there. Get with lawmakers, get with your city council, get with your community leaders, and to your point, get with these companies that don't have anything to do with tourism, because really they do. Every industry has something to do with tourism.
Yeah, and that's probably the synthesis of those two, which is why I chose to go third here. Thank you both for the ideas. We have to really take it, take that and bring it to the step of let's pull into the board level or committee level or some sort of staff advisory group or industry advisory group. I talked with the manager at Publix, and Publix, for those who are not in the Florida market, is the grocery chain, is completely dependent upon tourism. When you look at the number of visitors in the area, the dry cleaner I go to, he knows when, all these businesses that you really don't think about tourism on, they're there. And when you flip that argument, we are creating a much greater economic footprint than we ever claim. And this is, if there's one wish in this, I hope this will wean us off the crack of bed tax. Because it just becomes this self-perpetuating thing that is driven by hoteliers and answered to as if the hotel industry is paying this. And I've had this discussion in many places. They're not paying it. It's the pass-through point. The visitors are paying that tax. So buy a hotel or drink sometime and have that conversation. It would be one afternoon.
I love it. Well, let me throw in one just because this is probably more on the nerdy, maybe more nerdy side. And I don't disagree with anything you guys have said, but I am going to steal the same acronym, Will, and say either Chief Evangelist Officer, right, or Chief Experience Officer. Now, I know there's a few destinations that have actually moved in that direction and have thought about holistic destination experience. But they've done it from my experience to what I'm seeing. They've certainly done it from the physical, but we're missing a giant hole on the digital virtual side when we're thinking full stack development, when you're thinking about understanding consumer behavior and how that consumer behavior actually impacts the economic vitality of your community. You know what I'm talking about? We've seen this, on and on, from simple things that other industries are doing as commonplace. But in the travel industry, we seem to be struggling. We seem to not know anything more beyond a web page or a page view or an email open rate and things like this. We really seem to struggle to close the gap and really understand the impact of everything that we're doing there. And what perfect timing here. Here we go. This welcome, Roger Dow. Thank you so much for tuning in. What a gift.
No gift. It's a gift for me to listen to you guys. Appreciate it. My gosh, isn't this the most insane time we've ever been through in our lives?
Yes, we've been doing these webinars with Connect Travel for the last 4 months or so, and it's been a lot. And we're remembering a little bit today, and then obviously thinking forward, knowing that for sure our love of this industry, knowing that we're going to bounce back. But you're right, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, well, we are going to bounce back. You're absolutely right. It's a matter of when. I think we're pounding away. If we could get our friendly folks in the Senate and Congress to be a little more friendly to each other, we might be better off. So that's the challenge we face now. The biggest thing we're pushing for now is get PPP for the DMOs. It was a tragedy that they weren't included through some bickering in Congress, but we'll get there.
Absolutely. I just got to tell you on a personal note, I so appreciate the work that you're doing and, the roles that you're filling, the conversations you're stewarding. We really appreciate it from everybody. If I could be so bold to say thank you for that. So it really does mean a lot.
Well, it's rather trite these days, but we are in this together, and it's all of us. Thank you.
That's right. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot just real quick because we're in the middle of answering a question from one of those that are watching, Patrick, and he said he asked us to think about in this new next normal, reimagining what the CVB DMO roles might be. What's maybe one position we should add to the mix that we haven't maybe thought about? Maybe a new role on our staffs or teams that we maybe haven't necessarily considered before, but now as we move forward, we think, oh, this is probably a key or essential piece. Any ideas just off the cuff?
Well, other than adding a physician and epidemiologist, I think what we should really add is someone who just continues to build relationships with the community and how important DMOs are. I mean, if they haven't figured this out by now, this unfortunately is a tough way, but teaching communities how important the DMOs are to their economy and to the jobs.
Absolutely. That's exactly where we left off. That's exactly what we're talking about, right? Some kind of thinking about, community engagement and what that actually looks like. That's fantastic. Will, go ahead and jump in.
Well, no, I've never seen the industry come together more than what they're doing now. And all these Zoom calls, it's a shame that we're not doing in person, but boy, I really, really appreciate Connect stepping in and holding these.
Well, thank you, Roger. And I guess, even for the trade association representing the biggest industry and the industry that's gotten hit so hard, I compliment you and U.S. Travel on some of the new initiatives that you've been doing. And the one question I had is you've been having some really impressive conversations with high-level leaders in the industry about the future of the business. And just love to kind of share some of the takeaways that you've had from the new Dow reports.
Yeah, they've been a lot of fun. You get a chance to talk to these CEOs, and I thought wouldn't it be great if everybody had a chance to hear from them. A couple of insights. One, everybody's talking about how important communication with their people is, but one of the best insights I got was from Ed Bastian, who's the CEO of Delta. And we're talking about safety on planes and health safety. And he made the comment that he said, Roger, if planes were so dangerous, why do we only have 0.01% of our flight attendants have gotten COVID? He said a fraction of what's happening. He said, and they're on the planes 5-6 flights a day, 4 and 5 days a week. And I thought the public should know things like that because actually the industry is going to be in much better shape. The challenge we face now is how the heck we're going to get group and large gatherings together. I mean, I keep talking to governors and officials and saying there's a big difference between 50 people in a phone booth and 50 people in a 1 million square foot convention center. And you can't just say 50 people. That just makes no sense. But that's going to be critical that we've got to bring business travel and group back. And I worry about business travel only because of so many corporate business policies that were put in place immediately on COVID. Now we've got to unwind those to get people permission to travel and to meet.
Oh.
No, that's really good, actually. And really key. I was reading something too about, again, air quality on airplanes, and MIT pushed a really great study out about the same thing. There is a gap in understanding of that, for sure. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's really good. Any other questions, I guess, that are coming in from those that are tuning in? We'll do our best to get to them over the last few minutes that we've got. You can feel free to drop those either in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to them. Will, for those that are tuning in, we got a question from Leslie here, right? Go ahead and introduce Roger, just so that everyone is on the same page here, Will.
Roger, we got some guests joining us from international, from Canada, from Europe as well. So they said, who is Roger? Roger is the president and CEO of U.S. Travel, the leading trade association representing the #1 industry in the United States, and fighting the fights on Capitol Hill, as well as really engaging the community and providing a voice for the industry when we need it, probably more than ever.
I'm like a mixture of Charlotte Bell and David Goldstein.
There you go.
More important than that, he's also my neighbor here in St. Pete. He's just down the street from us here in St. Pete. Hey, Roger.
Hey, David, how are you, neighbor?
Good. See you soon. Can I ask you a question real quick? And I'm sure a lot of people are curious. You're still flying a lot, and you have no trepidation about it. Can you talk to us a little bit just about what that experience is like? Because I know a lot of us haven't been on an airplane in quite some time.
And I think it's important that we all do. Number one, the airlines are doing a really good job. Everyone's wearing masks. The other day, one of my colleagues told me he got off on an American flight, and they actually took 4 people off who said, we're just not going to wear a mask. And, it's a pain. I don't want to wear masks forever, but I think we get this behind us, the faster, the better. But each flight that I've been on has gotten more full and more full. First flight I took, there were 10 people on it. Then next flight, there were 20. The last flight I took was like 75% full. The only thing missing is chance to get something to eat on the plane. You got to bring your own these days. There's not much service, but the airlines are doing a great job. The airports are doing a great job. I mean, my gosh, the airports are squeaky clean, and it looks like everybody is really getting their act together and behaving, so to speak, with all this the physical distancing and all the different things are important. And I think the most important thing is everyone asks the question you asked, David, is what was it like? And I think the more of us that fly, the more we come back and tell our friends and our neighbors, hey, it was no problem at all. I felt extraordinarily comfortable, and I can't wait for my next trip. That's what's going to get people stepping out and traveling, because we got half the country says they can't wait to travel, and the other half says not so sure. So we got to work on those not so sure folks.
Well, I'll give it to you. You put your money where your mouth is. You're out there traveling. That's your job. That's your industry. So good on you for that, Roger.
All right. I'm going to sign off now, but I just want to come in and say hi, and thank you, Dave. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Connect, for pulling this together.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate your leadership.
You bet. Bye now.
How about that, right? I mean, just popping in. What's happening? Just out and about. Just go to Roger Dow. I love it. Well, this has been really good. We just got a couple minutes left, and I would say, where we left off, which is thinking about, what does a year from now look like? I mean, what do we think? What do we think? Let's, let's put our best hats on. And again, none of us are full-time prophets by trade, but what do you think, David? Let's start with you. What do you think? A year from now, what are we saying or thinking or talking about?
I specifically, I'll let Will answer the specifics on that one, and that's what you get for going third, Will. But I would speak on the much higher, on the 30,000 foot level of behaviors. And when you look at these behaviors, how our behaviors have changed so quickly in 5 months. And behaviors, while they might be quick to learn, they're slow to unlearn. So I think a year from now, the residual of behaviors we're learning right now, will people still spend as much as they spend discretionary each month on restaurants? I've been looking at my Amex bills year over year, and it's like Amex think I died because I'm not out eating restaurants or bars spending money. There's that. There's what we were just talking with Roger about flying, So my greatest concern or the place I'm most curious is to how this is going to affect our behaviors, how long it's going to take us to unlearn. We learned out of fear very quickly. I'm just dumbing that down, but basically that's what it was. And to unlearn out of comfort is a completely different schedule. So that's kind of where I'm thinking, Josh.
That's really good. Alisa.
I would just say, I think it's time to look internally. Look at your infrastructure, look at your bylaws, look at the way that you are partnering with other similar organizations, look at your community. This is a really great time for you to be very internal and, do an ROI on everything you do and what you expect that you'll be doing and what you want to do better. And I think you don't need consultants for that, really. You can do it, but I do think it's a time for us all to just look internally.
My man, Will.
Well, it has been fascinating again watching the arc of the conversations over the last 5 months. And I'll tell you the one thing that I think we will be driven to without, we're going to be in a world like the headline of today's conversation where we have to react much faster. And I think one of the things that, again, is in tourism marketing, we've all gotten very comfortable with this long-term planning cycle. It's a year and a half or 2 years out, and maybe a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. And I heard a great quote that, long term is 2 weeks and out, and near term is in the next days. And that's something that we as destination marketers are not trained in. We're not really accustomed to. We're much more used to the long-term committee conversations and things like that. And so I think what we're going to find is that destination marketers a year from now are going to be much more nimble, much quicker. It's not going to be about pivoting, because pivoting kind of implies I'm going the wrong direction. I got to go a different direction. I think it's going to be much more, nimble, accurate, quick to identify opportunity, identify KPIs, execute and monitor and doing that a lot faster. So I think we will see a community of destination marketers that are kind of thinking a lot different, a lot quicker, a lot more nimble, and I think probably more impactful.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that the impact of what the DMO has traditionally thought of itself is about to go through a radical transformation, and they already are. I think we already are, but I really think that how we calculate our impact is radically set to evolve and become far more holistic. The things that we measure, the things that we report on, how frequently we measure them, and how frequently we report on them. A year from now, I think we will be looking at things completely different through different lenses based on that. David, yeah, go ahead.
I want to tag on something Will said, and I think inherent in what you're talking about, Will, is getting more comfortable with risk taking on the DMO level. We have a history of stepping our toe in the water 30 times before we dive in, and I get that. I understand exactly why. We're in an environment right now where we don't have the luxury of stepping our toe in 30 times. You got to see how deep it is and decide whether to dive or jump, and take it baby steps. But I would add that to you, Will.
Good stuff. Well, just wrapping this up again. Thank you for those that maybe you want to share this. Somebody couldn't make it. You know, this has been recorded and will be posted live. Sherry will get that posted for us later, and you'll be able to see that, share that. If you haven't registered for eTourism Summit, right, go ahead and take advantage of that. Huge opportunity with lots of options for both, not only you and your organization, but your community too. The community pass this year is going to be fantastic. So even then, thinking about community engagement and what might that look like, take advantage of that for you and your destination. If you haven't reached out to any of us on the call through LinkedIn, certainly please do. Help Alisa make more than $300. Let's do that. Let's do that for sure. But I love it. I'm teasing. But thank you again so much for all of you for tuning in, whether this was your first time or you've been here all summer long.
And Josh, I want to just personally thank you for being our moderator for the last 4 or 5 months. You have proven to be an expert, the best I've ever seen. So thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for your support on this. Very, very much appreciated. And thank you to Streetsense for allowing you to spend a couple hours a week working on this and bringing some really thoughtful conversations to the industry. I certainly don't want the conversations to stop. We're going to take a break between now and eTourism Summit so we can be ready for 21 days focused on 2021. So that's going to be some great programming, and I look forward to having you, Alisa, David, and many of the people that are attending us today be part of those. So, but thank you again.
Absolutely.
It happened without you, and the conversations have been great, and I hope everybody will continue. And the final little plug is if you're focused on travel trade, those conversations are going to continue every Thursday moving forward.
Excellent. Have a great rest of your day and great week, and enjoy the weekend, friends. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.